What would the gurus do? The Two Business Guys Mastermind on how to turn the apprentice model into abundance in your business. Enjoy. This business podcast, the Two Business Guys Mastermind, uncovers for you secrets and share tips and tricks to entrepreneurship as they mastermind on how to have startup, operational, and overall business success so that you can go on to get better results. Enjoy. So, Rob, this one's fun. And in this episode, we want to talk about, the mentorship model, not just the mentorship model, but going further, the apprenticeship model. It's seemingly gone out of style, but it used to work very, very well from all I've read back in the 1700s and all that kind of stuff. And they had people, hey, you come in apprentice under me, and next thing you know, they become these superstars. What do we have now that's equivalent? Is it masterminds? And why don't we just have that apprenticeship model? Come with me, I'll show you everything, and then you go off into the world and be great.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things that go into that. I mean, when you look at the apprenticeship model, right, from martial arts all the way through to different industries and trades and skills, the whole thing about it is most people are not really good teachers. Most people don't know why it is that they're good at what they do. They just know that they're good at what they do. And so there's a couple of things that happened with that apprenticeship model. Number one, as apprentices, you would have to find a good teacher. And now when you find a good teacher, guess what? That teacher is in a lot higher demand. And so it's a lot more difficult to get time with that teacher. And so then because that teacher is teaching so many people, then the results of those students, even though that teacher for his inner circle or her inner circle is really good, the results of the students that are on the kind of fringes go down. So you got all of these things that go into it. And then similarly, if you're a teacher that's really good and you're only teaching a couple of students, you're kind of limiting your earning potential and your earning capacity, because number one, you're not able to do what you're really good at because you're teaching. And number two, you're not able to teach a lot of people. So it's one of those things where you really have to look at it and understand where people are coming from and why people are doing what they're doing. We went to the kind of industrial and the manufacturer model, just the same way we went away from, skilled craftsmen making stuff, right? The Industrial Revolution changed things because we figured out that adequate quality was better than top quality. And oftentimes adequate quality, repetitively consistent quality was going to get you better than having, 15 different teachers where 3 of them are really, really good and 5 of them are, okay. And then the other 7 of them are just saying that they good.
I don't know. I think about bringing it back in some capacity, right? I got a couple of ideas. Remember I was telling you that out of the 120 domains that I have, right? Only 120, I should say, that they all deserve a chance to live. So instead of having them in the file, I'm going to just spin up a landing page for them and get them out there, right? It is, and each one of them becomes an opportunity to go deeper. And it doesn't cost me anything to have them living and have them out there, living, breathing, and bringing people in, especially now too. And if everyone's listening to this, you start thinking about, how am I going to grow my business? How am I going to grow my idea? First things first, the idea needs an opportunity to grow. Right. So spin it up. I'll show you. Send me some ideas that you have, and then we'll get on Zoom or something, and I'll show you some of the tools and tips and all that kind of stuff to use that'll allow you to get it out there fast and easy. One thing that was a constraint for me, Rob, was cost. You remember I was telling you about this, and I says, man, you know what? Every time I spin up one of these darn things, it's costing me $8 a month or whatever it is. Now, are there opportunities to do that in a more cost-effective way? I hadn't gotten there yet. Right. So now I have, and it's one of those things. I was literally apprenticeshipping with someone, and they told me, oh, we'll use this. I don't
Exactly.
know how to use that. I was afraid of the tool as a
Yeah.
software, as a guy that loves software. And
Yep.
then it was like, well, if I showed you a tool that you could use really easy with that, and I was like, yes, started using it, confidence restored, and bam, now I'm going, okay,
Now I can do
that
all
could
of this
be the
stuff.
difference between business being at X amount a month and it
Hmm.
being. So try some of this stuff. Like I say, put some information in the
Yeah.
comment section if you got a couple things that you're thinking about, or you got a tool that you use that you go, hey, I
Yeah.
can spin up stuff for no cost all day long.
And that point that you just made is really important, right? Like, because again, talking about the history of how we got away from the model, it didn't mean that it wasn't great, but just like with, and I think a lot of people, a lot of times, well, we don't kind of, right? If we, those of us that don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. The whole idea was the apprenticeship model was the only way before. And the apprenticeship model was I'm sorry, it wasn't the only way. It was the better way, right?
Mhm.
Because before the apprenticeship model, it was figure it out on your own. Right. And you were just going through that, figuring it out on your own. And you're like, and you saw you were kind of stuck. You had these boundaries, these barriers, because figuring it out on your own, you're like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to keep doing this thing over here. And that's what so many people had. Then the apprenticeship model came, and now you have a mentor that's like, hey, do this, do this, do this. And it dramatically shortens the learning curve because you have a guide along the way to learn. Right. Now, what happened to the apprenticeship model is, like we talked about, it had its limitations. It was not scalable, right? Because the teachers didn't really get great at teaching as much as they just allowed access to themselves doing. And if you had access long enough and you were able to ask the right questions and pick their brains and all the rest of that, your learning curve, your learning pathway would be faster. But if you remember, before the Industrial Revolution, the apprenticeship model, it was really that the teacher was already, like, they had already made it, and it was the student's job to be able to learn from the teacher. It wasn't a big focus on teachers being good teachers as much as it was, are you a good enough student? Right.
Mm.
And that's what gave rise to the Industrial Revolution, because the Industrial Revolution said you don't have to be a good student. All you have to do is follow these instructions,
Yeah.
and you can create, or you can reproduce at this, again, adequate level, right?
Mhm. It's
More
fast.
than the best teachers can reproduce. And so the apprenticeship model went away. What I'm thinking about, and what you and I've been talking about, and what I think is kind of what you're talking about now, is the apprenticeship model at scale. And the whole idea is, right, because we know how it is, mass production is normally poor quality. That's just the
Mhm.
way, that's the sacrifice, that's the trade-off that you get.
Mhm.
But what if you could have mass production and high quality? Right. And a lot of what we talk about with legacy leadership is, how do you take that high quality that you have and mass produce it? How do you get the best out of the people that you lead? Right. I'm a firm believer that the skill of the 21st century is going to be leadership. It's going to be the ability to get the best out of other people. It's
Mhm.
going to flip the narrative on its head, and it's not going to say, is the student good enough? But the currency of the day is going to be, is the teacher good enough? And if you're good enough as the mentor, you can have and service a ton of apprentices that can make you, I mean, just exponential amounts of money, and
Wow,
have a
that's
legacy
good.
from that.
That's good. And I love that idea that as you teach, you create in others something that extends past you. Right.
Exactly.
That's legacy. That's the legacy play.
And as the teacher that knows how to teach, you not only teach what you do, you teach how you teach, right? So the whole concept, right? We've talked about this a couple of times about, you know, the idea of, and it makes perfect sense, right? There was a scarcity model before. Teachers felt like, I had to pour out of me into you.
Mm.
That was the way that you got what you got. That took
Mhm.
away from me doing what I needed to do, right? And so there was an opportunity cost to being a mentor, which meant I had to be less so that you could be more. That was the idea, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and it makes sense that people were not really into that. But what we've done is we flipped that on its head. You heard me talk about this before. It's the abundance model, right? Instead of me having to be less for you to be more, by me being more, you get to be more, because you get to be more from my abundance, right? You get
Ooh,
to be more from my overflow.
see, and that's something, man. When I saw the graphic that you had, and I'll try to put it up. If you all don't see the graphic that I'm talking about right now, if I forget to put it up in editing, then just put it in the comments or DM me or something like that, and then I'll get it up. But Rob had this graphic that showed the old model, right? Pour out of yourself into others, and then next thing you know, you're drained. And this other picture, Rob, do everything you can to describe that picture. But that is the abundance model, and that is the opportunity I think that exists right here.
Exactly. The whole idea of the abundance model, what I call the thriving leadership model, is that you learn to pour into others from your abundance. And any of you all who have ever seen a champagne tower, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? There's a glass at the top, and there's glasses underneath, and it gets in like a pyramid of glasses, right? But the key is the top glass never turns over, never pours out of itself. It never empties. But all the glasses below it get full. And more importantly, when you look at the top glass, it pours from its abundance. It continues to overflow and fill up the glasses below it. But watch this. Not only does that happen for the top glass, but then because of the way that the top glass pours into the other glasses, none of the other glasses lower down in the pyramid turn to pour into others either. Those glasses also or into the other glasses from their abundance. And so the whole concept of living from abundance, of thriving in abundance, is demonstrated at the top and continues down to every level of those that are getting poured into. So when we talk about legacy, you're not just teaching people what you do, you're teaching people how you do it so they can get the same results, but more importantly, so they can give the same results to others, right? We talk about, a legacy leader is someone who creates other legacy leaders, right? A legacy leader is someone who not only creates the environment for leaders to be cultivated and grow, but someone who creates systems by which it's almost impossible for people under your tutelage to not become leaders in the same vein that you are a leader.
See, if you all have watched the podcast enough, then you know when Rob is getting ready to say something important, because he looks into the camera and that voice changes, and it's legacy leader is. And that's the powerful thing about us individually having, our own individual businesses and things that we're doing, and then coming together on these days and talking it out, right? It is pouring into each other, getting ideas from, being inspired by, every now and then we get a little competitive, and that's good too. And we do this with the ideal of benefiting you. How can, with what we're saying, something we drop out, benefit you? When we create the books and all the little things that we create from these talks, we hope, right, from the two business guys masterminding on a problem, a situation, an opportunity, a thought, right? We hope that you get some value out of this, where you can go, hey, I just heard them and they poured into me, and we're not sitting over here going, boy, and now I'm drained.
Exactly.
We're using that whole champagne model in what we're doing right now. If you're seeing that, put a thumbs up. If you say, nah, that's a bunch of canal water, put a thumbs down, right? But here it is. This is it in itself. Now the question becomes for you, in your business, what are you doing as a leader of one? Okay, it's just you're in a room, you're making millions. Well, if you ever wanted to extend past that, and you wanted to build a business, because it's about time you get out of your that entrepreneurial loneliness or whatever it is, and you start going, well, how would I then become a legacy leader? Well, Rob is going to be your person. He's going to be the person that says, I'll show you. Here's how you do it. So call him up. Now, when we talk about apprenticing with him, I don't know how that might look. But here's something, Rob, that I came across this. You watch this stuff, you hear it, and you kind of go, dang, I'm not doing this. So almost on some level, you don't believe it. I was thinking about something that Alex Hormozy said. Now, we see oftentimes the fully formed. We see the person that's already made his 85 million. But then one day I'm listening to him, and he broke down how he got there. Hadn't even known about this, because you see that fully formed person. You see them at their peak, or at their their money,
their zenith, right? Yeah,
at their Patrick Bet David moment. They sold, and you go, oh my God, this guy's great. But then they start telling you, well, let me tell you how I apprenticed with somebody. I went over here, I did stuff for free, right? Just to be in that person's atmosphere, or to have a steady stream of work so you can get your reps and get better.
or I even paid them to work with them, right? You listen to it and you hear it. Puffy, right? Had the same thing, right? Now Diddy,
Sure
right?
will.
But he'll
Yeah.
always be Puffy for me. But you know, all of those different things you see, and Kanye was just trying to be around Jay-Z, trying to be around, but he was doing beat, he was doing this,
And
and
Dame Dash. Yep.
right, and he was working with no ID before he was doing it. Like you hear all of these different types of stories throughout business, right? Warren Buffett, apprentice with
Graham, I think it was Benjamin Graham.
Benjamin Graham, right? And decided to make sure that he went to Columbia so he could learn from this one man, right? Like all these different things. You know, where you see greatness, you see this apprenticeship model, like you were saying. And the key, I think, to for the entrepreneurs who are listening to this on this podcast, the key is you have to realize that if you're going to be that legacy leader, if you're going to be that person that can be a mentor to others, you have to constantly be seeking mentorship and learning in your journey. One of the keys, I remember when I was becoming a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu instructor, one of the things that they talked to us about was the most impactful thing, and the reason why they started making instructors at blue belt all the way through black belt instead of just having you wait to a black belt is because the actual best instructor for a white belt is a blue belt, because a blue belt knows exactly what it feels like to be a white belt because they were just a white belt, right? Whereas the further removed you get from the grind, the further removed you get from being in that novice space, the harder it is for you to really understand that. And this is the thing that I say I want you to take with. If you take anything from this episode, take this part. If you want to be a mentor, make sure that you are constantly being mentored, right? That whole thing, the champagne model starts from you being poured into, ensuring that your job as the leader is to ensure that you're always full, that you always have something that you're overflowing with. As Randy was just talking about, the reason, one of the best things about this podcast is we don't leave this podcast drained at the end. We leave it energized. Most of the time we get off and we're like, all right, I got this idea, I got this thing, because we're pouring into each other. We have things in our lives that constantly pour into us so that we don't feel like we're pouring out. It feels like there's not enough room for everything that's here. So here, let's get some of it out because there's an abundance there. And it starts from ensuring that you're focusing on pouring into you. Who are you apprenticing to? Who are you learning from? You heard Randy just talk about it. He was like, man, I don't know how to do this thing. He found somebody who knew how to do it, and they gave him a tip that then sparked something.
Yeah. And that's where your insights, it really becomes a matter of, now you can become an expert, but there's something about experts too, right? Or you can become that generalist that knows a lot, that this wide versus deep, right? There's benefits to being both. But what I like to do is learn a lot. And I have found sometimes you feel, oh my gosh, I'm scattered, I'm all over the place. But then something amazing happens, right? The convergence of all of those things, right? And then it hits you. I told a group of people this the other day. I said, I went to all these years of school thinking that would be the thing that did it for me. And you get a little jaded. Sometimes you get out and you go, man, somebody owes me a refund. I didn't learn shit in school or whatever, right? And then one day you're talking and you're saying something like, it's about this, that, and the other, right? And you're regurgitating something you learned in like third year.
Yeah.
Right. And I was doing something, talking to these folks, and I dropped out something that my econ professor, which was a very, very hard subject matter. I got a good grade in it because I understood the concept, so I just couldn't do all the work. But I still got a good grade because in essence, I got it, right? And the teacher says, you got it. Get somebody else to do all the work, right?
Yeah, exactly. All the stats and stuff.
Einstein, the thing. I'm smart, but I need people to, you do the math.
Yep.
So and no additional marginal cost, right? So it's like when I was saying something to them, it was just yesterday. And I says, yeah, I just discovered creating no additional marginal cost businesses. Room went silent. And they were like, well, what's that? And I says, and now, so from way back then, a term, and then you see how it has informed your life. Well, that's why you're learning a lot. And because it will inform your life. And one day you'll go, wait a minute, that's exactly what I'm doing. Rob does it too. He just earlier before we came on here, he said, Randy, when I hear you say something, he said, what I'm thinking about is, how do you scale that? Rob's a business builder, right? He loves doing that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he's thinking, how could I build a that's what I hear when I hear you say that.
Yeah.
How could I build a business, a really big business out of that idea, that concept? And what I tell him, I says, listen, just ask me, I'm not that person that wants to do that for a variety of reasons. But Rob is like, look, this is my thing. This is what I do. This is what I just, get all frothy in the mouth doing. And me, I'm like being able to take an ideal and concept and go, let me show you the path.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, now you walk the path. I don't want to walk the path. So you see what's happening, everyone, when you're listening to things that we're saying, or you hear from another, somebody else is saying something to you. And if you can now get with someone that you can go, can I unleash all of this stuff that I learned to help your company? What do you think I'm gonna go? Nah, get out of here. I'm gonna go, heck yeah. It's something that I just recently saw someone say as a good idea. Rob, you're gonna love this. They said they have a lot of money, little time. They found themselves in the middle of getting popular. That's how I'm gonna say it. They just got popular. They were, kind of a no-name, money guy, and making his money, blah, 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 good money, but making money. And all of a sudden, like, because he had time on his hands, he just started, doing a couple of things, tweeting out some stuff, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, he blew up. And so he kind of like, well, wait a minute, I'm the money guy. I just go in the room and, but all of a sudden he starts getting popular, right? And then, in the other podcast people, when I was listening to this, they were like, well, you're a good looking guy. So you're like what Russell Brunson talks about, the attractive character. And he says, have you leveraged that? He's like, nah, because I'm not on visual stuff. But he started getting extremely popular. And then he says, you know what? It would be amazing if somebody would just come along and say to me, can I be your growth person? Can I apprenticeship with you to grow your business? He says, I would pay them whatever it took. Think about that. Now, we love for you to hear something we say and you go, I can create a business from that. Whatever business, whether it's a lifestyle business, but man, Rob, if you can make yourself, we talk about pathway to 100K, you want to make yourself a quick 100,000, you go get 10 people at how much? Come on, do the math. $1,000 a month. And now I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so that might do all right here. You're in New York, you may have to make that, 10 people at 20,000 a month, or 10,000 a month, or 5,000 a month. You see the point here. Somebody's out there saying, well, I wish somebody would come along, apprentice, if you will, with me to say, hey, can I help you with this? And then maybe you can make money in the margins. I read a book about that once, making money in the margins. It didn't, maybe that should be the title, but that's what the guy said. He says, I make money in the margins.
Exactly.
In
the whole
margins.
thing, there's so many people that don't realize, right, that you don't have to make, I remember I heard this, and I think it was an Andrew Carnegie quote. It was, I would rather make 1% off of 100 people's effort than 100% of my own effort.
Well, that's that Industrial Revolution model, wasn't it? I'm gonna get a whole bunch of people in a factory.
A whole bunch of people.
I'm gonna put them on this line.
Right. But the whole thing, and a lot of people are like, well, that's exploitation. Blah, blah. It's like, no. Here's the thing that you got to understand. The flip of that, I've heard it said this way as well, is I'd rather have 50% of a watermelon than 100% of a grape. Right. And the difference is those 100 people by themselves, right? Those 100 people by themselves are all grapes. But if you can put them together, now it's a watermelon.
Scale. See, I told you, Rob always says that.
Right.
And
the key is it's better for everybody. That's the thing. It's more for everybody. They would have been making 100% of their grape. So when Amazon comes to town, people are always like, oh, they're exploiting people, blah, 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 blah. It's like, wait a minute. The average wage for a warehouse worker in your town before Amazon gets there is $13 or $14 an hour. So you by yourself with these other business people that are running businesses, $13, $14 an hour. Amazon comes to town. The average wage goes up to $15 an hour. But if you work at Amazon, you make $18 an hour.
Now they're gonna work you.
Now they're gonna work you for that 18, but the average wage everywhere goes up because they got to compete with Amazon now. So you can go, if you don't want to work at the Amazon level, go back to the place that you was working, and you can get $15 an hour where you were getting $13 an hour before Amazon came. But the concept is like they're taking something from you, and it's like, no, people don't understand synergy. It's not 1 + 1 = 2 or 2 + 1 = 3. It's 1 + 1 = 5. 1 + 1 = 5,000. Right? Synergy is there's something bigger because we came together. Now, how do you apportion that? How do you say this part is your part, this part is my part? It's a whole different question. But know that it's because the two came together. It's not because of the one or the other.
There it is. That's the show, everybody. How do we make 1 + 1, equal whatever that next number is? Not 2. Right. Rob's got to get out of here, but that's it. The apprenticeship model. Right. I'm going to call this, I'll probably call this episode something like, what would the gurus do, or something like that.
I like that.
But that becomes an opportunity. What would they do? How can I help them? How can I now build a business as a result of that? Hopefully you got some value out of this. If you have, smash all the buttons that need to be smashed. I should have asked you that earlier, but this is the deal. You can learn from what we just said, and you can go and build a nice little business. Hope that helps you, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
Have a great one, everybody.